Hi, everybody. I'm Dan. Welcome to the Huddle French speaking podcast. And today I am with someone I'm sure in Miami no one knows. No, I'm kidding. Everyone knows Travis Wingfield. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm so glad we got a chance to finally link up and do this. Seth from the Fish Tank, put us onto each other, and I'm really glad that this Dolphins community that can be, South Florida or globally expanded is nice to see Dolphins fans all over the world. I'm pumped to talk to you today, Dan.
I will say the Miami World Dolphin. That's the case. We are international now. So thank you to Seth to challenge you, by the way, and because you guys are awesome, you say yes, and you are there today to do your journey because the name of the show is the journey. So we will speak about your journey. And first question is the most easiest one. How do you start following football? How
Yeah,
did story
so
start?
Yeah, the very beginning of the origin story. So, I mean, it's funny because when I grew up, I played basketball and baseball all the way through junior college, and football was I played for 3 years as like from like 10 to like 13, and then I never played football again. But as I got older, football became my passion to follow as a fan and really study and get to know the game from the nuances of the game and everything. So my love of football began. I mean, as soon as I could walk, I was into sports. So it really picked up when I was probably, 4 or 5 years old. But as I got older into junior high, into high school, and then once I graduated high school and was, no longer playing sports, or after, a couple of not so good bouts in junior college of sports, I was no longer playing sports, and my interest in sports was even higher than it was before. And so I really sunk myself into football. But I would say I mean, my first real memory, and this is going to be the microcosm of being a Dolphins fan. My first memory as a Dolphins fan is a sad one, of course. It was the '94 playoffs when Pete Stoyanovich missed the field goal against the Chargers to lose that playoff game. So I would have been 7 years old when that kick happened. So yeah, it's since I was very young.
It was yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. That's 30 years ago too.
You
Thinking about it,
no,
man, I'm
don't
getting
say that.
old.
Don't say.
Jeez, man.
But- and you talk about your relation with the Miami Dolphins, but maybe in your young age you were maybe not Dolphins fans, or you start with the Dolphins since the beginning.
Yeah, so early on, I was a fan of players. I would collect jerseys every Christmas or birthday. All I wanted was football jerseys. I had a Ricky Williams Saints jersey when I was growing up. I grew up in the Seattle area, or in Washington State, I should say. So I had like the Sean Springs and Sean Alexander jerseys that supported those guys a little bit. But I also had a Dan Marino jersey, and I'll never forget. In the fourth grade, we played intramural flag football at lunchtime and lunch and recess, and I wore my Dan Marino jersey for game days. I think that's probably where it kind of took off, was wearing that 13 jersey. And then I had the big poofy, aqua orange starter jacket that every kid had back in the 90s. And the more it just the older I got and the more I became focused on one team, it became the Dolphins for me. They were always on Monday Night Football back then. They were a really good team. The Seahawks were not, so that was a big selling point for a young Travis at that point. But I would say probably around like 9 or 10 was when the Dolphins became like, "That's my team, and I'm not going back."
Yeah, for sure, especially now.
Yeah, yeah. There's that bridge is long gone by this point.
And what do you like the most about football in that time? Because I know now you do analysis. We'll talk about that later. Don't worry. But what took your attention of the game?
Yeah, I think it was kind of the romanticism of the game, like in terms of what it looked like in January and those big playoff games. And this was back when, running backs were kind of the stars of the league. And you had these big running backs with the big shoulder pads, and they were, 3 yards in a cloud of dust and just running through piles. And, the Dolphins had obviously a bunch of great backs in the '70s. And then Ricky Williams came onto the scene in 2002. And that was like, oh, this guy is special, huh? He can run around you, he can run through you. And so it was kind of just the allure of like, a cold wintry day, the snow falling on up in Orchard Park, and the Dolphins going up there trying to win a game, or a playoff game where Eddie George is trying to run through tackles. Something about that era of the physical nature and the big hits and the low scoring games, that was what really attracted me to the game at first, and it's obviously evolved since then. But I would say those power running backs in inclement weather late in the year around Christmas time, like, it's just the perfect combination of like everything that you love in life coming together at that point in the calendar.
Yeah, so you start in at the wrong edge, at the right edge, sorry, because it was the time of the running back in that time in 70s. they're running the ball maybe 80% of the time, and with Ricky Williams, the first year with Dan Wanstead, it was one of those years that you remember forever. He break records, and we run Ricky run. It
That's
was
right,
not
you're
for
telling
nothing.
me.
But
I came my first Dolphins game was in 2003. They played the Eagles on a Monday night, and they had to win to keep their playoff hopes alive, and we came down here for a family vacation, basically for me, to watch the Dolphins, but we went to, like, Disney World and all that stuff too, and I had a "Run, Ricky, Run" sign, so my first game as a Dolphins fan brought the "Run, Ricky, Run" sign to the game with me.
so you start the thing.
Yeah, I was copying people, but, from this point forward, I guess, yeah, maybe a little bit.
So running back was your favorite spot on the field, or you have others that you love watching? You talk about Sean Springs was a cornerback, right?
Yeah, yeah. Sean Springs was a cornerback, a Seahawks first round pick out of Ohio State. It's crazy that I know all this stuff still. But Sean Alexander was the
Professional.
Seahawks back for a while there. Yeah, right. From Alabama, and yeah, just man, like the Priest Holmes era. I think where it came from, Dan, was the fact that when I played little league football, it was called Grid Kids back there, or back in the state of Washington. Was that every like you ran the ball every single play. So the best player on the team was the running back. And so that's where, like, oh, the running back is, that's the best athlete. It's like a kid that is a pitcher and shortstop in baseball, like it's the best athlete on the team plays that position. So of course he's the best player in the field. So that's kind of where that comes from, I think.
Okay, but so the the next question is complicated when you're a Dolphins fan, but what is your favorite memories or worst memories you have as a fan? Still, we still be in your fan time,
Mhm.
because now it changed, but since a few years. But what is your best and worst memories?
The best is obvious for me. Well, it's hard. I'll probably give you two. The AFC East clinching game at the Meadowlands back in 2008 was very special to me. I was going through some personal stuff at the time, and just getting that surprise season to win the division when you weren't supposed to, coming off a 1 win season the year before, and like I mentioned, hadn't experienced really anything successful for the in terms of making the playoffs in the last like 6 or 7 years at that point. So at that time, that was really important to me. But spin it forward to 2018. I was at the Miami Miracle game covering the game with a fan like credential. The Dolphins ran this promotion like where fan sites could come and come for the weekend and cover a game and get locker room access. And I had it that day. And it was just such a special day because like, obviously they stole victory from the jaws of defeat, and it was the press box was going crazy and the locker room was crazy. It just was a wild, wild scene to be a part of. So that's probably the top one above the Jets game, just because of the personal like connection of me being here. Now the worst one, man, that is a there's so many options.
Those-
That's a tough question. I'm probably gonna go with some recency bias and say last year, and this is probably has more to do with like the profession of it. So Seth and OJ and I do post game radio, and after wins, it's a party. We're out in the middle of the stadium, or on the outside of the stadium, I should say, in the middle of where all the fans congregate after the game, and it's a party, and we're all having a good time. But when they lose, it's the converse of that. And last year, the somber mood around that Titans loss and the fans that were coming up. We have this one guy that listens to every show we do, and he was like just beside himself, smoking his stogie that he always has post game, just like looking up to the sky, wondering what had happened in that game. That I still carry that feeling with me today. But the feeling that probably is stronger than that, even though like I was kind of expecting it because we don't ever beat Buffalo, was the Week 18 loss to the Bills when like there were so many Bills fans in the stadium that night, and to watch them celebrate and to have a good time and steal a division that we had, in the bag 5 weeks earlier. That was, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning doing the show, and you're tired and you want to go home. Golly, that was a tough night to come back from. So those two nights combined, and within a 5 week span, was pretty brutal.
Yeah, those two memories are very in my mind, because for your information, for the Miami Miracle, I turned off the TV.
Yeah,
So
I don't blame you.
I saw the play on social media, and I was like,
Wow,
I just missed the one of the greatest play ever, just because I
amazing.
turned off. I mean, okay, my bad. And the second one, for watching the Monday Night Football for the Titans, we have to wake up at 2 a.m. and we
Oh,
watch until 5 a.m. So normally I don't do that because I have kids, stuff like that. So I said to my wife, this one is very important, I have to watch it. And I was cool that we were winning that game. So I say, okay. So my wife wake up at 6. She saw me and she said, oh, I hope they win. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm still wondering why I stay wake up
Ugh,
that
I
much.
lost
So,
sleep and a playoff position. Oh, no.
and they lost in in the final minutes. So please don't talk to me about that later, ever. And you say, okay, but you still have to with the kids and drive them to school. And I was like, oh man, why they don't win? So
What a rough day. That's a good one. That beats mine, I think. That's pretty good.
um, and before we going into your now professional activities, how do you connect as a fan, become a writer? You host the podcast of Drive Time Podcast, and you member of the Miami Dolphins Network podcast, right?
Mhm.
So how do you transition, because you were a fan and you become a member of the Miami Dolphins organization, is that, if I'm correct?
Yep. Yeah.
So
So yeah, I work for the Dolphins here I'm here in the podcast studio right now doing the show with you from the studio. And going back to like the early obsession with the Dolphins, and I also became obsessed with column writing articles. In fact, my friends and I had a backyard football league, and we did the whole thing where we had a fake website that had the stats on it and the standings, and we would like film the games and have challenge replays. And on the website, we would write game recaps, and that was my job. And so I'd write like Josh Meyer threw for 6 touchdown passes as the Buccaneers, whatever the case was. And so that love for writing kind of matched up my love for the game. And I'll never forget going back to Ricky Williams. My first byline was, "Are two running backs better than one?" It was taking a look at the Ronnie Brown, Ricky Williams era for the Miami Dolphins, and that came from being on message boards for years. This is before social media and Twitter, where we would communicate as Dolphins fans on a website called Fin Heaven, and then eventually became thefins.com. And that was like where I met, Simon Clancy, who I'm sure you're familiar with his work from 3 yards per carry. Chris Kaufman was
yeah,
on there, Alfredo Artiega, tons of people that are really smart, passionate Dolphins fans were on there. And I learned how to kind of write, to be honest with you, on that message board, like how to formulate, like, proper sentence structure and make an argument and be persuasive. And that just carried over onto multiple fan sites until one day you talk about tough times as a Dolphins fan. 2015 was the first year where I like kind of checked out, kind of like you with the Miracle game. I was
yeah,
like, I'm not watching this anymore because I had just met at the time, it's my wife now, but as my girlfriend, I just met her at the end of that 2015 season. And I knew going into the year that it wasn't going to work with Joe Philbin. Like I was like, what are we doing here? They start off 1-3, they fire Philbin, and then the two Dan Campbell games, like, oh cool, we won a couple of games, we're back in it, and then they went back to what they were. And I was like, I'm not going to watch this. I've been through the rebuilds, I've been through all the stuff. And Tannehill might be like, I just don't want to do it anymore. So I checked out from the 2015 season, and then right before the 2016 season, I got a message from Sam Marcoux, who runs the Perfectville podcast with Chris Colin. And they to me were like the original Dolphins podcasters. They had that show cranking out back in like 2015. And Sam was like, "Do you want to write for the website? Because we want to do like a commentary as well." I'm like, "Sure, I'll do that." And like the way it all just came flooding back into me, like the love and the passion for it, with having something to do additionally besides just being a fan and watching the games, like it hooked me. And ever since that year, I've been working for the Dolphins, like on Dolphins content. Like I haven't just watched a Dolphins game since 2015, really. And so he put me on to the website. I got so invested in the podcast. I was like, I can do the podcast. So why don't I start my own show? They were willing to have me on their airwaves as like a sister podcast. I had Kevin Dern was my co-host of that podcast. It was called the Finalysis Podcast. We were terrible. We didn't have any real direction. The production was awful. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were just talking like trying to talk shop, but it got me those reps. And then eventually David Locke from the Locked On from the Locked On Sports Network reached out because I had put on Twitter, like, I'm looking for a new podcast. Like, I'm going to start a new podcast. And he's like, don't start a new podcast. Just come do Locked On Dolphins. And I looked into them and they were just getting off the ground. And because of that insane passion, and, I was doing the show every single day and writing articles every day and putting videos on Twitter and just spamming everybody. Here's my Dolphins content. Come read me. Cause I think that my voice is really important for some reason. And it just caught fire and it got really popular. And from there, the great late Jason Jenkins, who worked here for the Dolphins for a long time, passed away in 2022. He caught wind of my content. And basically, over the course of those fan site games, I'd come down and cover. We would kind of like, catch up, and he would be like, what are you thinking? And one day I was like, you know what? I think you guys could pivot to more of a like modern style approach to media with podcast and video and YouTube and all this stuff. And he really liked that idea. And over the course of a couple of, years, I guess, it kind of came to be like the Drive Time podcast and me being on the face of the YouTube channel and whatnot. So it went from like being all the way out in 2015 to slowly building that passion back up to 2020, getting a job with the Miami Dolphins. So a 5-year run that I never could have predicted, but I'm so happy to be where I am now.
And this is how you build your story. It's always have a journey. That's what
Exactly
we're
right.
talking about. And I want to play tribute to Jason Jenkins because I talked with Hugo Manero in Spain who had a podcast, and he said to me a lot of good words
Mhm.
to him. So I want to play tribute to him. Um, so now we don't now we don't have to explain who is Travis Wingfield in football and especially in Miami. And you talk at first that you were focused on player. That's what you like, player. And now you're doing breakdown and you bring players to talk about. So now I understand when I see your eyes that you work, but you're just enjoying what you're doing, right? It's a dream come true at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll kind of catch me sometimes, whether it's a press conference or like when we had McDaniel for the first piece of content he did was with me on Drive Time back in our studios over here, or having Chris Greer on. Like sometimes I can't help myself, and I'll ask my fan question or like kind of get a little bit over my skis with how I approach it. And to your point, like, yeah, that Titans game stunk, right? It stunk to sit out there. And the primetime games, you're up till 5 o'clock in the morning. For me, it's like I get to bed like around 3 o'clock after all the content gets done. And after a tough loss and then waking up on a short night of sleep it's tough. But like gain perspective, right, Travis? Because like you're doing this where before you got here, you were working at a staffing agency doing, writing BS emails, or, I was doing water and fire restoration for a company that had no future in. So like the perspective that I've gained from years of hard work and doing real jobs allows you to appreciate that this isn't really a job. You're just kind of like you're having fun and you get paid for it.
Absolutely. And Seth told me that the Drive Time podcast is the best podcast on internet, especially in the Miami Dolphins community. If you have to present that show on a few words, how can you describe anything you're doing? Because I love, by the way, what you're doing. I'm a big fan, and if I'm now here, it's because I always said that you said it's because of Seth, and especially because of you too, because you guys show us that as a fan, as a normal person, we can create content and speak to anybody about what we love. So if you have to talk about the Draft Time podcast, hey, to the French community, what you have to say about that?
Sure. Yeah. No, I like the setup because, uh, and the thing that has been the hardest for me to adjust to in this role compared to Locked On Dolphins was the perception that because of my role, I can't be honest. I don't have a fair critique of the negative things that happen for the team. And I'm just a mouthpiece, fanboy home, whatever you want to call it. That bothers me to my core because when you do hear my content, I don't approach it that way. I am honest almost to a fault sometimes. And I feel like for a fan looking for a podcast of their team, I don't know how you feel about this, Dan, but to me, when there's no emotional investment into the team, it's a lot different. And I like a lot of national podcasts that cover the entire league, and I always find myself being like, you guys don't really know the Dolphins because this is not accurate when you talk about them. But that I get. But when you're covering the Dolphins, if it's just a team that you're on the beat because you have a job covering them, I don't feel that same connection to that person because they aren't going through the same things the fans going through with all the emotions and the highs and lows. And that's the beauty of this game, right? Like I watched the Browns and Broncos game last night on Monday, talking to you all here on Tuesday, and that was a big game for the Dolphins in playoff seeding purposes. And the Browns, like when the Browns had that go ahead touchdown, I was like clapping and it was fun and it was enjoyable because that's the passion that you love. And the downside of that is when they lose that game, you feel the same way in the other direction. So I've always tried to bring that passion and that just genuine, I really care about this approach to the show on top of years and years. Like I told you, I really got into this game back in my teens. Like I've put a lot of time into learning this game and the nuances of it and what happens on film and talking to coaches and players and utilizing the resources I have here to get smarter about the game, to watching coaching clinics online and learning from the best in the world at how this game works because it's a very complex game that if you don't put that time in, and that's fine if you don't, but you're not going to know the ins and outs of what happens on a given play. So I've really invested as a fan, the passion, and then the general knowledge of the game. And I think that the ultimate selling point I would say is that, I think a lot of like modern day content, whether it's television, streaming services, or football beat writers, like I feel like what their content comes from is an algorithm that tells them what their fans want to hear. But I've never taken that approach. I've always just this is what me, a lifelong diehard fan that loves this game and team, wants to hear. So I'm going to cover it from that perspective, and that's carried me the whole time. People always ask me like, "How do you come up with a show every single day?" It's because like that's all I think about is Dolphins football. So when I'm driving and I'm like, hey, I give my phone to my wife, like write this note down. I have a podcast segment idea. It consumes me, and so that's why I think it is to me the best podcast for Dolphins fans because it's for Dolphins fans by a Dolphins fan who has put the time in to learn this game, to learn this team. I have a deep institutional knowledge of this team going back to the 90s. I know it's not the deepest, but it's pretty far back as far as being almost 40 years old is concerned. So I just think it's a comprehensive balance of fun, witty, knowledgeable, and then I also throw my personality into the show quite a lot, which is pretty off the wall. I'm not. I don't take myself too seriously. So if you want to have a good time, if you want to learn about the Dolphins, then Drive Time is the place for you.
Absolutely. And the passion and the hard work, because behind the scene we don't see that, but they have hard work to learn anything. And of course you will not trash the Miami Dolphins. You work for them. I mean, people have to be aware, but to have a truth and honest opinion on anything and trying to go deep inside what the Miami Dolphins is built, how they play, how they will prepare the game. I think it's important. And the beauty with the Miami Dolphins is there is a lot of content. I mean, I don't know for the other community or other teams, but in Miami you have a lot of podcasts, different angles. So everyone in 7 days a week can find a way to have their their Dolphins content they want. So they have place to anybody. But of course, I will say on Tuesday, learn. Listen also the fish tank with OJ and Seth and you. But talking about OJ said, because you guys, I always feel that you guys are three like best friends going together and speak about the game after the post game. So uh, what is to live and live the passion with Seth, another fan, because he was a fan before, and RJ, of course, one of the greatest legend, number three wide receiver. So in the history of the Miami Dolphins, period. I say that every day, not because he's speaking French, just because when I start in '96, I love the '81, number
Yeah.
81.
I love every time I see OJ in here for content when they do his mic check, he counts it off in French. So he's very, very well versed, that man. He's very well traveled. And yeah, to your point, that's probably the most surreal part. Like I just texted him yesterday because it was his birthday. Like, happy birthday, bro. Like I'm
Yeah,
saying that to OJ McDuffie, a guy that the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game, I'll never forget. Talk about core memories. I was
yeah.
in the sixth grade watching it in my living room, jumping around the house as he had a huge third down, one-handed catch conversion to extend that game-tying drive. And I'm celebrating one of my favorite players in the league, and now he's one of my best friends in the entire world. We hang out, we talk trash to each other on text messages, and we do the post game show. And to your point, it has become like three best friends. Like Seth and OJ are my two best friends I've made in South Florida, and I think it comes across on the post game show because we have bits that we do. We have a great time with our producer and our board operator who has sound clips that he clips off for us, and we make fun of each other, and we all kind of have fallen into this character we become of ourselves. And we play into that, and it makes a lot of fun on the show. Wins or losses, my favorite thing about doing that show is it's kind of like a therapy session, getting after after a game to discuss with those guys what went right, what went wrong. But yeah, I mean to be able to pick up the phone and just like text OJ or talk to OJ, it's like he's such a man of the people, and he has so many people that come up to him after games, and he's so great to all of them. But to call him my friend, it's truly crazy because, like I said, he was a childhood hero of mine, and now he's one of my best friends.
And talking about Seth too, which is a great guy because he challenged you. He could not challenge you again. So I'm very thankful he did it. I'm gratitude for him. And every time I ask him something on DM on social media, he always respond. So a few words for this great man too. He didn't catch a ball, but he catch a lot of football love from the Miami Dolphins community.
Yeah, and to your point about Seth, if you just as a human, if you need something, Seth is he'll probably hear this, so I hope I don't get him too emotional. But in a lot of ways, I view Seth as a kind of a father figure. He's not quite old enough to be my dad, but when I first got down here, I had it's close. I hope he sees that.
Oh yeah, oh, no, don't worry, we'll put that on.
I can't wait for him to see that. But when I first got down here, there was so much that I had to learn and kind of get used to with just how a team operates. And he was my go-to source for that because he worked in the building, for so long. And whether it's content that I want to get across the goal line that maybe I'm getting pushback on, or if it's just advice with how to approach a certain situation, he's always been my guy for that. To your point, he always responds and he's always available. So he's just one of the best people I've ever met in terms of how he treats others. He takes everybody to this. It doesn't matter what level you can help him or can't help him. He'll give you the same level of respect back and help you if you have questions for him about advice or whatever it might be. Seth is salt of the earth. Great person.
Yeah, of course. And you were a fan, you become a professional with your work. That's what we learned today. You work hard to become a professional. Now you are a name that uh, everyone knows, and you create a family with your two best friends today. And what is there a question that I didn't ask you today, and you would love to answer? Is there a question that you would answer?
I think you did a pretty good job of being comprehensive with it. I the more experience I get in this business and in this industry, the more I kind of gather in terms of how it's seen from multiple perspectives. And uh, I the thing that I guess I would go back to is just the pushback I get from, like you mentioned, like you can't trash the organization or say certain things. I've just always by nature been an optimistic person, because why follow this game that is a total hobby, outlet, escape from real life reality, which is tough enough as it is, just to complain about it. I've never understood, fire this guy, replace this guy every single game. I'm going to live and die with every single snap and result, and my emotions are going to be too much to handle with every single result. Like, step back and have some perspective and realize this is a tough game. It's a sport that involves a lot of luck. And if it just makes you sad, then maybe it's not for you, because I just feel like there's so much negativity. And like, I know some fans like call out the coach and call out the GM and call out the quarterback and ask these tough questions. And it's like, for what are you trying to get out of this? So I just want to say that as much as my content comes across as like raw sometimes, that's not the team doing that. It's me. It's just how I am. That's who I was with Locked On Dolphins. It's who I was with the Finalysis podcast. So enjoy it. It's a sport. It's supposed to be fun. It's not life and death.
So what a great question I should ask.
Well, I mean, you did touch on it. It's just, I mean, I've been dealing with that for 5 years. When the Dolphins put out their first, welcome Travis Wingfield for the drive time and Seth and OJ for the fish tank, we're going to officially have them on our channels here. Like, in the replies, there was guys that that didn't like me, and that's comes with the business, that were like, oh, you're going to hire that guy because like. So I've been dealing with it for 5 years, but it still bothers me a little bit.
Don't worry. I receive message every day that saying that I'm a French. I'm still talk about soccer and not football. So don't worry. There is always people
Yeah,
who,
gotta
who,
love
who
social
who
media,
have to
man.
say something, and
Uh,
that's life. That's life. We have
yep.
to all live together, and with good and bad thing. But I think you did a pretty fair show today, and you really share your story, and the thing, like said, the thing I love regarding the Miami Dolphins. if you work hard, you could have a chance. So maybe you can inspire young people who are in their teenage age and become the next Seth Levitt or the next Travis Wingfield. Be careful, guys. They're still there. They will not let down for very easy. But hey, we have to prepare the next generation, and I think it's great. It's great to see that you can become someone important in the Miami Dolphins community and in the Miami Dolphins organization in terms of writing a podcast of the thing you do. And I think it's a great story. And the Miami Dolphins are maybe not the best team in the recent decades. I will say that in that way, but I really feel that there is a really good person in the Miami Dolphins community, in the Miami Dolphins organization. They give the chance to people if they prove that they are good and working hard, and I think it's great. So I'm proud to be a Miami Dolphins fan. And by the way, when my wife asked me when we were girlfriend, boyfriend, are you loyal? I say, you kidding me? I'm a Dolphins fan since the 96. 96. I could pick any other teams and I stay with the Miami Dolphins. You can be cool with that.
Absolutely. That's the ultimate sign of loyalty. I mean, there's a couple of fan bases that have had it maybe worse than the Dolphins the last couple of years, but yeah, we're right up there in terms of wanting to see just a little bit of success once the calendar turns to January. We haven't got much of that, so yeah, loyalty comes with it's synonymous with being a Dolphins fan. That's for sure.
For sure. Travis, thank you very much. Just you have a last challenge. You have to say a word in French. Do you know one?
We
Okay. It's
one
the
more.
rule.
Yeah.
Well, you say we. Okay, you will don't say je m'appelle OJ, but okay, I understand.
Oh, shoot. I always reference the movie Inglorious Bastards with Brad Pitt, and I think it's a scene where he says "Traglesa" and he holds up the three. Is that
Yeah.
am I right, or am I in the right language? I hope I am. I don't know. So
No,
Traglesa, no, three glasses. I don't know, it might be the
it's
wrong
in
language.
German. I
Yeah,
guess it
that's
was
what I
a
thought it was
German.
German. Damn it! All right, cut that, cut that, cut that.
Don't worry, don't worry. I will. Hey, Travis, thank you very much. It was an honor for me. Uh, we never know what can happen in life. We can have another conversation, maybe a wrap up show with. Uh, Imagine listen. I give you a little challenge to you, Seth and OJ. What about making a wrap up show, even if maybe it will be soon, of the Miami Dolphins season, all four together? What about that? Are you okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Let's do it when the year ends. That's a good idea.
yeah, end of the season when you guys will go to vacation. If you go to France, don't hesitate to ask me to be your
Yeah.
guide. But Seth, OJ, Travis, I challenge you to do a wrap up show here.
I'm in, and I don't want to speak for them, but I'm positive they'll be in too.
Okay, let's see if the two other friends will say yes.
I
Okay,
promise they will.
who's a positive comment to Travis Wakefield who take his time to talk with the French community. It's awesome. I guess we have to do more connection and create an international brand because soccer, tennis, basketball are in their selling. So American football can become one of the greatest sports in the world, which could be almost amazing. And for players, agents, think about that. Look at Messi and Ronaldo.
Right.
They have a pretty damn good life. So
Yeah, you're not kidding.
international could be very good for business too. Travis, have a great day. Thank you very much. And put the positive comments to Travis. Bye, everyone.